Hey, what's up everyone? Today we are diving into the celebrity world with a story about Pedro Pascal and how his own struggles with mental health may have landed him in some hot water and some controversy in regards to boundaries with his co-stars and just how he publicly copes with his feelings of anxiety and how that may have backfired on him. Now, I don't normally delve into a lot of celebrity stuff, so there may be some things that I'm not up to speed on. Please feel free to let me know in the comments if there is something that I've missed. But for the most part, I'm trying to give a perspective on men's mental health, some of the societal impacts of how we talk about men and their mental health, and how that's playing into this particular story and just what I think is going on here. Keep in mind that I don't know any of the people involved personally, so there's no way for me to know whether my conclusions are accurate or true, but this is just what I see based on the very little data that we have and other people's feedback about the story. Before we dive into the story, please do like and subscribe. That helps the channel to grow and for us to continue making content like this, reacting to different stories here in culture and across social media, as well as just providing education about mental health and how we can navigate the mental health process, both for us personally in our own journeys, as well as professionally with somebody like a counselor or a therapist. So please do like and subscribe. Let's dive into the story. So on August 16th, Crazy Clips posted a video of Pedro Pascal and his co-star Vanessa Kirby walking in San Diego Comic-Con. And before I give any other context, here's the clip. So basically the context is that they're walking into Comic-Con together, promoting their new Fantastic Four movie that's going to be coming out. My opinions about the Fantastic Four movies notwithstanding, that's just what they were there to do. And he touches her arm, she grabs his hand and holds onto it. So a bit of background about Pedro Pascal before we get into the controversy is that back in 2019, he shared that he has been struggling with anxiety for a long time. And part of what helps him to calm down and cope with that anxiety is actually a somatic coping skill or a body-based coping skill where he puts his hand over his stomach. I don't know whether he feels that anxiety particularly in his stomach or if that's just something that helps him to feel grounded, but he has shared way before this that is how he copes with anxiety. He also said in a quote that a certain level of anxiety helps him to do good work. And we'll talk about that later as well in terms of his relationship with anxiety. But that's some of the background about why this clip was posted. Hey, what's up everybody? I am so excited to announce my partnership with Mental Athlete Apparel. They are an apparel company that is dedicated to promoting youth mental wellness and health through activities beyond just sports and promoting the dedication, the mental toughness, and the work ethic that those activities require just as much as traditional athletics do. I'm really excited about the work that they're doing because 15% of all of their proceeds from their apparel sales goes straight to supporting youth mental health organizations. So please check them out in the link in the description below. We have more promotions planned for them soon, so stay tuned and check them out in the link in the description below. Now back to the video. So based on the caption on this clip, Crazy Clip said, Pedro Pascal suffers from anxiety and when nervous needs to touch someone to calm down. And now based on what he said with the personal way that he grounds when he holds his hand over his stomach, it's not too far-fetched to think that physical touch from another person may also be helpful for him in calming down or being able to cope with anxiety. Sure, I can understand that. So what's the controversy? So a bunch of different people did comment, reposting the clip and adding their own kind of caption or feedback on this. And one person said, using anxiety to touch people is just gross. What an absolute fool. This man is and always has been a creep. Like I said, I don't know Pedro Pascal personally. I don't know if he's had other controversies before around maybe inappropriate touching or sexually inappropriate advances towards co-stars or other people. This user is saying that he's using his anxiety to be able to touch his co-stars. This other commenter said, holding hands with a beautiful blonde is quite relaxing indeed. So very dismissive of any mental health component to this. And they're saying that he just wants to be able to hold his beautiful co-star's hand. Many sexual offenders have the same condition. So basically commenting that this is just another Me Too kind of situation where a male Hollywood star is using his power to be able to touch a female co-star without her consent. So there were many more comments in this kind of vein, and that's kind of why it came across my feed, because this was gathering some momentum and I wanted to dispel some of the myths and maybe some of the misconceptions around male mental health as well as just this particular situation. Like I said, I'm not going to presume that I know what's going on in either of their heads. This is just based on my observation on a little snippet of video evidence, if we want to call it that. The first thing that I'll say is that especially in this day and time, if Vanessa Kirby did not want to be touched, she had probably a lot of options to not continue being touched by Pedro Pascal. When he originally reached out to touch her arm, she actually grabbed his hand and seemed to hold onto it. She could have moved away, she could have pushed him away, and probably none of that would have reflected badly on her, especially, like I said, after all of the Me Too stuff. There would have been a lot of support for her pushing him away or just moving away from his touch if it was unwanted. Again, we don't know the background behind the time that they've spent together filming and working together, and maybe they've had conversations about, hey, if we're on a red carpet or at an appearance together and I'm feeling anxious, would you be comfortable if... And maybe she's talked through some of those boundaries with him about what she's comfortable with and what she's not. So we're not privy to any of that. I'm not necessarily assuming that that's taken place, but if she wasn't surprised or necessarily put off by it, then maybe we can give some benefit of the doubt to her having some agency and either having these conversations beforehand or being okay and comfortable with it. The other thing I'll say about the physical touch piece is that somatic therapies are gaining a lot of ground when it comes to work with different kinds of mental health disorders. And anxiety especially is a diagnosis that can be really helped with somatic treatments. Somatic basically meaning body-based treatment. So a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy is kind of a top-down therapy in terms of I'm going to change how I think about the situation, and that's going to help my body kind of respond and calm down from this anxious feeling that I have. Somatic-based therapies kind of work backwards in terms of a bottom-up approach where we're trying to calm our bodies, and that allows our thoughts to slow down and allow our brains to come back to a more rational, logical place instead of a fear-based place. And a lot of parents actually engage in this without necessarily knowing it, but we know that hugging an anxious or scared or upset child will probably pay much better dividends than trying to talk them out of feeling scared or feeling upset. And so that's kind of an oversimplified understanding, but yes, physical touch or just physical-based grounding and calming techniques can be really helpful when it comes to anxiety rather than just having more thoughts swirl in your head or telling yourself that I'm thinking wrong, I'm not telling myself the right thing, which can actually promote and increase the feelings of anxiety because you feel like you're even more out of control or doing things the wrong way. What I'll say in terms of the larger context is that this does get into some of the concerns about male mental health. And I'm not trying to get into like a feminist or anti-feminist kind of thing here, but just that the way that we talk about men and physical contact especially can be problematic. The fact that for a lot of these commenters and responders, their first impulse was to say this is a sexual thing, this is a sexually inappropriate overstepping, and he's being a sexual predator, that cuts to some of the messaging that all of men's physical contact is inherently sexual, and that's problematic, is that it cuts men off from physical contact, which is a need for both men and women, just people in general. It's detrimental to having deep and real relationships, and also when it comes to mental health is also harmful because it cuts off an entire avenue, potentially helpful support from community, from people who love us and who care for us, even if they don't know the right things to say, that if we're not comfortable with physical touch, that's cutting off an avenue that could potentially be helpful for many men when it comes to mental health. And just even thinking back to when I was in high school, this no homo thing was said all the time because we're so scared of any physical contact between guys or any expressions of affection for each other being construed as gay or homosexual. That again is a sexualizing of male contact that set an expectation for us guys for how we relate to one another or how we don't relate to one another, what's appropriate and what's not, because it was just presumed that any physical contact was considered sexual unless we specified otherwise. So absolutely, I see this as another extension of how we can police men's physical contact. And I don't want to understate how there has been a power imbalance and how sexual predators have taken advantage of those power imbalances to abuse people who are in less powerful positions, less privileged positions. But I think it's gotten to this point where it's become very detrimental to men who want to seek out physical contact, not for sexual reasons, but out of friendship, out of support, and out of caring for one another, whether it's physical contact between a man and a woman or a man and a man. So outside of all of that, I appreciate how forthcoming Pascal is about his struggles with anxiety and his relationship with anxiety, because it could be very easy for us to imagine that, oh, it would just be so easy if I didn't have to deal with anxiety at all, if it just disappeared from my life. But he said that he actually does his best work when he's feeling a little bit anxious. And so he's trying to strike a balance between not feeling too anxious and also not feeling anxious at all. We have anxiety for a reason. Now, I know a lot of my clients don't like to hear that, but I use this example with some of my students sometimes. And if you never felt anxious about anything, or if nobody felt anxious about anything, what would actually get done in the world? People wouldn't be going to work. People wouldn't be turning in assignments, wouldn't be studying for tests. Anxiety helps us to perform in a certain way by feeling some of the pressure, feeling some of the desire to succeed at something or have a fear of failing at something. Now, that can obviously be taken way out of proportion and become detrimental and crippling, but we can't underestimate the fact that if it didn't exist, that we would be very different people. And so I do appreciate what he says about his relationship with anxiety in that way, that he's not trying to get rid of it, but that he tries to have a healthy relationship with it, and that it actually gives him some of his edge as an actor to be able to do some of his best work. So like I said, I'm not super into the celebrity scene, but this story did feel like it was worth commenting on because it touches on a lot about male mental health, about some of the dynamics individually between Kirby and Pascal, and just some of the assumptions that people make based on their experiences or based on their perceptions of things when we don't know what kinds of conversations that these two might have had about his mental health and how they might be able to support each other as friends, as co-workers, as co-stars. I also did appreciate his quote about his relationship with anxiety. I think that's very helpful for people to hear that anxiety being present in our lives is not always a bad or a detrimental thing, and that it can be a good thing for us, but that we need to navigate that relationship with it. So everyone, thank you so much for watching. Again, please do like and subscribe. Please comment below. Tell me what your thoughts are about this story and about mental health for men in general, and about physical contact and somatic therapies as a support for mental health. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll see you all next time.